Hi everyone, in this class we are going to discuss about theory of industrial location provided by D.M. Smith. The classical assumption assumes perfect information, unlimited concepts, computational capacity and an unwavering drive towards strict profit maximization. Okay, strict profit maximization. The myth of the rational actor, classical economic geography championed by theorists like Alfred Weber and August Lost, relied on a convenient fiction, the perfectly rational decision maker. Okay, now the geographical reality. Real industrialists operate in complex space, driven by perception, limited by incomplete knowledge, and constrained by time. They do not calculate perfectly, but they behave humanly. Okay, behavioral. From idealist models to human behavior. Dimension, classical theorist, and D.M. Smith's reality. Objective, classical theories, profit maximization. On the other hand, according to D.M. Smith's reality, satisfying, that is acceptable profit. Information, classical theories perfect, D.M. Smith, imperfect and costly. In terms of decision making, classical theories fully rational, D.M. Smith behavioral constraints. Approach, normative, that means ideal, and behavioral, that means realistic. Geographic outcomes, single optimal point and satisfactory location zone. Okay, these are some differentiation between classical theories and D.M. Smith's industrial location theory. The gravity of boundary rationality. Borrowing from Herbert Simon, Smith recognized that location decisions are weighted down by reality. Time limits, the inability to evaluate all alternatives before the market moves. Capital cost, the prohibitive expense of gathering complete spatial data. Knowledge gaps, the uneven distribution of local knowledge and reliance on networks. The behavioral result, decision makers are forced to abandon profit maximization and instead adopt satisfying, choosing a location that is simply good enough. Warping the map, how we perceive space. Absolute spatial data, lack of familiarity, distort distance, past experience and course expectations, social influence and habits, narrows options and perceived space. The cognitive deletion, an industrialist will naturally overestimate the transport cost in distant, unfamiliar regions and functionally deleting viable locations from their mental map. The search for good enough. Firms do not soar the earth for the perfect site, they stop at the first site that works. The aspiration threshold, set a minimum acceptable level of profit. Halt the moment a location crosses the satisfactory threshold, the search abruptly. Okay, this is the diagram provided by Smith. Identity evaluation, evaluate familiar ground, like this. Okay, from points to regions, the optimal point. Classical theories demand mathematical precision, locating the single coordinate where transport and labor costs are minimized. The acceptable region, Smith acknowledges that because supply is unlimited and demand is constant but varied, multiple profitable locations exist. Firms survive anywhere within a broad margin of profitability. The spatial margin of profitability, cost and revenue, space and distance. The danger zone, outside the margin, cost exceed revenue, firms inevitably face bankruptcy. The safe zone, inside the margin, businesses satisfy their profit aspirations and survive. The danger zone, outside the margin, cost exceed revenue, firms inevitably face bankruptcy. Key insight is that an entrepreneur does not need to look at the exact mathematical center to run a successful, sustainable business. Okay, three topographics of profit: constant cost and variable revenue. Mechanism is that profit is driven purely by proximity to demand and a real-world application in urban markets, example the NCR, National Capital Region of Delhi, where demand is hyper-concentrated at the center and fades outward. Variable cost, constant revenue. Cost mechanism is profit is driven entirely by reducing production expenses. Real-world applications, weight lodging industries like iron and steel, clustering near raw material sources by minimized transport cost. Variable cost, variable revenue. Mechanism is that firms must balance complex local pricing against local operational costs to survive. Real-world application, the most common reality for modern manufacturing and retail. The replicant force of uncertainty. The center, high familiarity, low risk, represents known infrastructure, established policy and market predictability. The periphery, high uncertainty, represents environmental risks, policy changes and market volatility. The behavioral takeaway, because of bounded rationality, decision makers are highly risk adverse. They huddle in the familiar center of the acceptable region, actively avoiding the geography margins even if costs are technically lower there. The best location is often a myth. The modern synthesis, when we combine the mathematics of spatial margins with the psychology of satisfying in contemporary global businesses' behavior, suddenly makes sense. The reality of agglomeration. Why do modern startups and SMEs flock to heavily congested, expensive established industrial corridors? Mathematical optimization dictates they should seek cheaper land elsewhere. Smith's reality dictates they rely on local networks, informal knowledge, and reduce perceived risks. Familiarity trumps optimal unit economics. The legacy of geographical reality. Perception is reality. Absolute geography matters less than how entrepreneurs mentally filter, map, and bias that space based on personal experience. Rationality is bounded. Severe constraints on time, capital, and available knowledge necessarily force industries into satisfying behaviors. Profit is a zero. Businesses survive within broad spatial margin, permanently invalidating the hunt for a singular mathematical perfect location point. D.M. Smith permanently transformed the location theory by proving that to understand economic geography, one must first understand human limitation. Okay, that's all for today. If you have any doubt and query, just let me know in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Thank you.